Sometimes the most powerful messages don't arrive wrapped in noise or delivered from a stage. They come quietly, almost casually, from someone who has already lived through the storms and learned what actually matters. When Elon Musk's mother spoke the words that caught the world's attention, it wasn't because she was chasing headlines. It was because she was telling the truth as she had lived it. And that is why it matters. That is why you should pay attention. May Musk has never tried to be a symbol, yet she has become one. Not because she raised one of the world's most famous entrepreneurs, but because of how she lived when no one was watching. Her words carry weight because they come from experience, not theory. From survival, not slogans. From decades of standing up again when life made it easier to stay down. When she speaks, she is not motivating you for applause. She is reminding you of something you already know but may have forgotten, that strength is built quietly, choice by choice, day after day. What makes her message so compelling is that it doesn't glamorize struggle, yet it doesn't deny it either. She has spoken openly about hardship, about raising children alone, about financial instability, about starting over more than once. There is no bitterness in her tone, only clarity. And clarity is rare in a world addicted to shortcuts. She doesn't promise that effort guarantees success. She promises that effort builds character, and character gives you the courage to keep going when success is delayed. The reason her words resonate is because they dismantle a dangerous myth, that extraordinary outcomes come from extraordinary luck. She reminds us that behind every visible success is an invisible history of persistence. Long before Elon Musk became a name the world would debate, he was simply a child with curiosity, intensity, and ideas that didn't always fit. What mattered wasn't that he was different. What mattered was that he was allowed to be different. Supported, not silenced. Encouraged, not reshaped to fit expectations. That lesson alone can change how you see yourself and others. Her message invites you to stop waiting for permission. To stop assuming that someone else's approval is the missing piece. She has often emphasized self-reliance, not in a cold or isolating way, but in a grounding one. The kind that says, learn to stand on your own feet, so that when life shakes the ground beneath you, you don't fall apart. Independence is not about rejecting help. It is about not collapsing without it. There is something profoundly freeing in the way she talks about age and timing. While many people shrink their dreams as they grow older, she expanded hers. She built new careers later in life, modeled globally at an age when society often tells women to disappear quietly. Her words challenge the silent deadline we place on ourselves. The one that whispers, "It's too late now." She doesn't argue loudly against that voice. She simply lives in a way that proves it wrong. Pay attention to what that means for you. How many dreams have you postponed because you thought you missed your chance? How many times have you told yourself that you should have started earlier, so now there's no point? Her life is a reminder that growth does not follow a single schedule. That progress is not owned by the young or the lucky. It belongs to those who keep moving, regardless of when they begin. Another reason her message lands so deeply is because it does not separate success from kindness. In a culture that often praises ruthlessness as ambition, she consistently speaks about decency as a strength. About being respectful. About working hard without losing your humanity. This is not weakness. It is discipline of a higher order. Anyone can push forward without regard for others. It takes real strength to rise without becoming hard. She has spoken about not complaining excessively, not because pain isn't real, but because constant complaint drains energy that could be used to build something better. This is not about silence. It's about direction. Where you aim your attention determines what grows in your life. If you feed resentment, it multiplies. If you feed effort, it compounds. Her message isn't to deny struggle, but to refuse to let struggle define you. What is striking is how practical her perspective is. There is no mystical language, no abstract philosophy. Just simple, grounded wisdom. Work hard, keep learning, be prepared, treat people well, don't give up when things fall apart, because they will. This simplicity is deceptive. It sounds easy until you try to live it consistently. That is where the real challenge lies. She also speaks honestly about fear. Not as something to eliminate, but something to move alongside. Fear does not disappear when you are brave. It just stops being in charge. She has lived through uncertainty enough times to know that waiting for confidence before acting is a trap. Action builds confidence, not the other way around. This is a lesson that can unlock stalled lives. Think about how many opportunities you have hesitated to pursue because you didn't feel ready. How many times you delayed action until conditions felt perfect. Her life quietly tells you that readiness is often a result, not a requirement. You grow into the role by stepping into it, not by standing outside rehearsing forever. There is also humility in her message. Despite being associated with extraordinary success through her children, she does not claim credit for outcomes she could not control. She speaks instead about providing values, support, and freedom. This distinction matters. It reminds us that we influence others best not by directing every step, but by modeling how to walk. Her words carry a subtle challenge. Stop measuring your life solely by visible achievements. Measure it by resilience. By how you respond when plans collapse. By whether you remain curious when answers are slow. By whether you stay kind when it would be easier to close yourself off. These are not metrics that trend on social media, but they are the ones that shape lasting fulfillment. Another reason her message feels timely is because it pushes back against victimhood without dismissing hardship. She acknowledges injustice and difficulty, but she refuses to let them become an identity. There is power in that refusal. It shifts your focus from what happened to you, to what you choose to do next. That shift alone can be the difference between stagnation and momentum. Her life also speaks to the importance of adaptability. She did not cling to a single identity. She evolved. Nutritionist, model, speaker, mother, survivor. Each phase built on the previous one, but none confined her. This is a reminder that you are allowed to change. That reinvention is not betrayal of your past, but continuation of your growth. Pay attention to how this applies to you. Are you holding on to a version of yourself that no longer fits, simply because it feels familiar? Are you afraid to start again because you think it invalidates what came before? Her story suggests the opposite, that every chapter adds depth. Even when it feels like a detour, perhaps the most important reason her words matter is because they come from someone who has seen both obscurity and recognition, struggle and stability. She knows that external validation is unreliable. That applause fades. That trends shift. What remains is who you become through the process. That is the real legacy. In a world saturated with loud advice, her message stands out because it doesn't shout. It invites. It says, do the work in front of you. Be patient with results. Take responsibility for your life without losing compassion for yourself. Keep going, not because success is guaranteed, but because growth is. When you listen closely, you realize she is not speaking about Elon Musk at all. She is speaking about you. About the part of you that wonders if your effort matters. About the part of you that is tired but still hoping. About the part of you that needs permission to believe that persistence is enough for today. Her words are a reminder that greatness is not always loud, not always fast, not always recognized immediately. Sometimes it looks like showing up again when no one is watching. Sometimes it looks like rebuilding quietly. Sometimes it looks like choosing optimism not because life is easy, but because despair is unproductive, so pay attention. Not because she is the mother of a famous man, but because she is a witness to what a resilient life actually looks like. Pay attention because her message strips away excuses without stripping away dignity. Because it challenges you to take ownership without denying difficulty. Because it reminds you that strength can be gentle, that ambition can coexist with kindness, and that it is never too late to move forward. And when you feel overwhelmed by the scale of your dreams or the weight of your setbacks, remember this: the path is built by walking it. Not all at once. Not perfectly. Just honestly. Step by step. That is the reason her words matter. That is the reason they endure. And that is why, if you listen carefully, they might change the way you see your own life. There is another layer to her message that often goes unnoticed, and it is perhaps the most uncomfortable one. It is the quiet insistence on personal responsibility even when circumstances are unfair. Not the harsh kind that blames people for everything that happens to them, but the empowering kind that asks a simple question: given what is in front of you, what will you do next? This question does not deny pain. It does not minimize loss. It simply refuses to let the past make decisions for the future. She understands, deeply, that life does not distribute challenges evenly. Some people start with support, others with silence. Some with safety, others with chaos. She lived this imbalance. Yet she chose not to let it harden her outlook. Instead, she focused on what could be built with what was available. This mindset is not glamorous. It does not make for viral quotes easily. But it is the backbone of endurance. Her words also carry a subtle warning against entitlement. Not in a judgmental way, but in a realistic one. Expecting life to be fair can quietly poison motivation. When you believe you are owed ease, every difficulty feels like an injustice. When you accept that difficulty is part of the human experience, effort feels purposeful instead of punishing. This shift changes everything. It turns obstacles into terrain instead of barriers. She has often emphasized preparation. Not obsessive planning, but readiness. The kind that comes from learning skills, saving resources, staying curious, and remaining flexible. Preparation is an act of self-respect. It says, I take my future seriously. Too many people confuse hope with preparation. They wait for things to work out without building the capacity to handle them when they do. Her life quietly argues that hope works best when paired with effort. Another reason her message resonates is because she does not romanticize burnout. She believes in hard work, but not self-destruction. She speaks about pacing yourself, about understanding your limits, about continuing without breaking. This balance is rare in motivational narratives that often glorify exhaustion as dedication. She shows that sustainability is a form of intelligence. That lasting impact comes from consistency, not constant overextension. There is also something profoundly grounding in how she talks about money. Not as a symbol of worth, but as a tool. She has experienced scarcity, and because of that, she treats financial stability with seriousness, not shame. Her message encourages financial literacy, self-sufficiency, and realistic planning. Not to worship wealth, but to reduce unnecessary fear. Stability, in her view, is not about luxury. It is about freedom from constant survival mode. This perspective can be uncomfortable in a culture that prefers instant gratification. Saving instead of showing off. Investing in skills instead of appearances. Choosing long-term security over short-term validation. These choices rarely attract attention, but they quietly change the trajectory of a life. Her words remind you that discipline often looks boring from the outside, but feels empowering from within. She also speaks to the importance of curiosity. Not just intellectual curiosity, but curiosity about people, about change, about possibility. Curiosity keeps bitterness from taking root. When you remain curious, you ask better questions instead of repeating old complaints. You stay open instead of defensive. This openness is what allows reinvention to feel exciting rather than threatening. Her relationship with change is particularly instructive. She does not cling to how things used to be. She adapts without resentment. This is not indifference to loss, it is respect for reality. Change will happen whether you approve of it or not. Resisting it drains energy. Working with it multiplies options. Her life demonstrates that adaptability is not a weakness, but a competitive advantage in an unpredictable world. Listen carefully and you will notice another recurring theme: gratitude without complacency. She appreciates progress without settling for stagnation. Gratitude, for her, is not an excuse to stop growing. It is fuel to keep going. This balance is difficult to master. Many people swing between dissatisfaction and comfort, never finding the middle ground where appreciation and ambition coexist. Her message shows that you can be thankful for how far you've come while still moving forward. She also models emotional restraint, not suppression. There is a difference. She does not deny feelings, but she does not let them dictate her actions. This emotional maturity is rare and powerful. It allows space between stimulus and response. In that space lives choice. And choice is where freedom begins. Consider how often emotions run your decisions. How frustration leads to quitting, how fear leads to delay, how comparison leads to self-doubt. Her life suggests another way: feel what you feel. Then do what needs to be done anyway. This is not coldness. It is courage practiced quietly. What makes her influence enduring is that it does not depend on circumstances staying favorable. It works in uncertainty, in transition, in rebuilding. It is not advice only for those at the top, but guidance for those still climbing, still searching, still figuring things out. That universality is rare. She also challenges the idea that success must look a certain way. Her definition is broader, more humane. Stability, purpose, growth, contribution, dignity. These are not flashy metrics, but they form a life that feels solid from the inside. Her words invite you to redefine success on your own terms. Rather than borrowing someone else's highlight reel, and perhaps the quietest, most radical part of her message is this: you are allowed to enjoy your life while building it. Joy is not a reward reserved for after achievement. It can coexist with effort. Laughter can exist alongside discipline. Meaning does not require constant seriousness. This perspective prevents the future from becoming a moving target that is never reached. As you reflect on her words, you begin to see that they are not instructions so much as reminders. reminders of resilience you already possess, of strength you have used before, of adaptability you may have underestimated. She is not telling you to become someone else. She is encouraging you to trust the capacity you already have, and this is why her message stays with people. Because it does not inflate the ego or shame the struggle. It steadies you. It says, keep going. Not because the world owes you success, but because your effort gives your life direction. Because forward motion, however slow, is still motion. Because rebuilding is not failure, it is courage in action. So when you hear her words echoed and reshared, don't reduce them to a quote. Sit with them. Let them challenge the excuses you've been rehearsing. Let them soften the harshness you've turned inward. Let them remind you that a meaningful life is not built in dramatic moments alone, but in ordinary decisions made consistently over time. This is the reason her voice matters. It doesn't distract you from reality. It anchors you in it. And from that grounded place, it quietly urges you to stand up, adjust your footing, and take the next step forward. Even if you're tired. Even if you're unsure. Especially then, there is still more beneath the surface of her message, something that speaks directly to the way people lose themselves while chasing approval. She has never shaped her life around pleasing an audience. Even when attention arrived, she did not let it rewrite her values. This quiet resistance to external validation is one of the most powerful lessons she offers. It reminds you that applause is unstable ground. Build your life on it, and you will always feel unsteady. She understands that confidence built on comparison is fragile. If your worth rises only when you outperform others, it collapses the moment someone does better. Her words gently pull you away from that trap. They suggest a different measure, progress against your own potential. Growth relative to who you were yesterday. This kind of confidence is calmer. It doesn't need to announce itself. It simply exists. Another subtle theme in her message is patience with outcomes but urgency with effort. She does not rush results, but she does not delay action. This balance is rare. Many people do the opposite. They rush outcomes and procrastinate effort. They want clarity before commitment, guarantees before work. Her life shows that clarity often comes after movement, not before it. There is also a deep respect for learning in everything she says. Learning not as a phase, but as a lifelong posture. She never speaks as someone who has arrived. Even now, she remains open to new ideas, new methods, new perspectives. This humility keeps the mind young long after the body changes. It protects against stagnation. It keeps relevance alive. Think about how easily people stop learning once they feel competent. How they repeat what they know instead of expanding it. Her approach is different. She treats learning as survival, as evolution. In a world that changes rapidly, this mindset is not optional. It is essential. Those who stop learning don't stay still, they fall behind. She also speaks, sometimes indirectly, about boundaries. About knowing when to say no. About protecting your time and energy. Hard work does not mean endless availability. Commitment does not mean self-erasure. This is a message many people need to hear, especially those who give too much and then wonder why they feel empty. Boundaries are not selfish. They are how you sustain your ability to contribute. Another important layer of her perspective is forgiveness, especially self-forgiveness. She does not dwell on past mistakes. Not hers, not others. This does not mean forgetting or excusing harm. It means refusing to carry unnecessary weight forward. Regret can be informative, but it should not become a permanent residence. Her message encourages learning from the past without living inside it. This is especially powerful in a culture that constantly replays failure. Social media archives mistakes. Memory magnifies missteps. Many people feel trapped by who they used to be. Her life demonstrates that you are not required to remain loyal to your worst chapter. You can acknowledge it. Learn from it, and turn the page. There is also a quiet emphasis on contribution over recognition. She values usefulness. Helping. Adding value where possible. This orientation shifts focus away from self-obsession and toward impact. When you ask, "How can I contribute?" instead of "How do I look?" anxiety loosens its grip. Purpose becomes clearer. Effort feels meaningful. She has seen what fame does to people. How it amplifies ego and insecurity at the same time. Perhaps that is why her words consistently redirect attention inward, toward values that do not depend on visibility. Integrity. Reliability. Effort. Kindness. These qualities do not trend, but they endure. They outlast attention cycles. Another reason her message feels steady is because it is grounded in reality, not fantasy. She does not promise transformation without sacrifice. She does not sell the illusion of overnight change. She respects the slow process of becoming. In a world obsessed with speed, this respect feels almost radical. Her story also reminds you that strength can look ordinary. It does not always roar. Sometimes it whispers, "Try again tomorrow." Sometimes it looks like paying bills on time, learning one new skill, showing up even when no one notices. These small acts compound quietly. Over time, they become a life. As you continue to absorb her message, you may notice something unexpected. It reduces panic. It doesn't inflame urgency or fear of missing out. Instead, it calms the nervous system. It tells you that you don't have to solve everything today. That steady effort beats frantic motion. That direction matters more than speed, this calm is not complacency. It is confidence rooted in process. When you trust the process, setbacks hurt less. Delays feel temporary. Uncertainty becomes tolerable. You stop reacting to every fluctuation and start focusing on what you can control. Her words also challenge the idea that resilience means never needing help. She values independence, but not isolation. She accepts support without surrendering agency. This balance is important. Many people either refuse help out of pride or become dependent out of fear. Her example shows a third way: accept assistance while remaining responsible for your own direction. Perhaps the most reassuring part of her message is that it leaves room for imperfection. You don't have to be exceptional every day. You don't have to feel motivated all the time. You just have to keep returning to effort. Keep choosing forward motion. Even imperfect action builds momentum. When you step back and look at the full picture, you see why her words linger. They do not intoxicate you with possibility and then abandon you. They stay with you in ordinary moments. In doubt. In fatigue. In rebuilding. They feel like a steady hand on your back, not pushing, just supporting. And this is why paying attention matters. Because her message is not about becoming famous, rich, or extraordinary. It is about becoming stable, capable, and resilient. About building a life that can absorb shock and still move forward. About trusting that small, consistent choices shape outcomes more reliably than dramatic gestures ever will. In the end, her voice does not tell you who to become. It reminds you that becoming is already happening, whether you are conscious of it or not. The question is whether you will shape that process deliberately or let it drift. Her life quietly suggests an answer. Choose deliberately. Choose effort. Choose growth. And then, patiently, let time do its work. At the deepest level, her message is not really about success at all. It is about steadiness. About becoming someone who can endure change without losing direction. Someone who can face uncertainty without panicking. Someone who understands that life is not a straight line, and stops demanding that it be one. This understanding alone can bring a sense of peace that no external achievement ever could. She has lived long enough to see cycles repeat. Trends rise and fall. Public opinion shift overnight. Fortunes appear and disappear. Because of this, her values are not tied to what is popular or praised in the moment. They are tied to what lasts. Character. Work ethic. Adaptability. These are not exciting words, but they are durable ones. They survive downturns. They carry you when circumstances change. Her message also quietly dismantles the fear of starting small. In a world obsessed with scale, she respects beginnings. She understands that every meaningful life is built from modest steps taken seriously. You don't need to see the entire staircase to take the first step. You don't need certainty to begin. You need willingness. That is enough to start momentum. There is something deeply reassuring in how she treats time. She does not rush it, and she does not waste it. She respects it. Time, in her worldview, is not an enemy chasing you, nor a guarantee saving you. It is a resource that responds to how you use it. Invest it well, and it multiplies. Ignore it, and it passes without return. This respect creates urgency without anxiety. She also teaches, without preaching, that dignity comes from effort, not outcome. You can fail with dignity if you tried honestly. You can succeed without dignity if you compromise your values. This distinction is rarely emphasized, yet it defines how you feel about your life when no one else is watching. Her life suggests that self-respect is a better compass than external reward. Another quiet truth in her words is acceptance. Not resignation, but clear-eyed acceptance of what is and is not within your control. You cannot control how quickly results arrive. You cannot control how others perceive you. You cannot control every obstacle. But you can control how you prepare, how you respond, and how persistently you continue. This focus restores a sense of agency even in difficult seasons. She also reminds you that resilience is not built in dramatic crises alone, but in ordinary discipline. In waking up and doing what needs to be done even when motivation is low. In choosing responsibility over avoidance. In continuing routines when excitement fades. These moments do not feel heroic, but they are the foundation of strength. As her message settles, it begins to feel less like advice and more like permission. Permission to move at your own pace. Permission to evolve. Permission to stop chasing validation and start building substance. Permission to believe that consistency is powerful, even when it feels invisible. This is especially important in a culture that constantly pressures people to perform their lives instead of live them. Her voice pulls you back from that edge. It says your life does not need to be impressive to be meaningful. It needs to be intentional. Lived with awareness. Guided by values that do not collapse under pressure. In the end, what makes her words endure is their honesty. They do not promise ease. They do not guarantee recognition. They do not deny hardship. They simply offer a way forward that works even when conditions are imperfect. Especially when they are imperfect. So if you take one thing from her message, let it be this: keep building. Quietly. Patiently. With integrity. Let your efforts speak before your expectations. Let your values guide your decisions. Let time partner with your persistence, because a life built this way may not always look dramatic from the outside, but it will feel solid on the inside. And that kind of strength does not fade with age, attention, or circumstance. It grows steadily, reliably, Until one day you realize that without chasing greatness, you have built something far more rare, a life you can stand on. That is the reason her words matter. That is why they stay with people. And that is why, if you truly listen, they don't just inspire you for a moment, they quietly change how you move through the rest of your life.